Hello, all you happy people. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Mole Hole with the hardest working sports announcer in St. Louis. He's Randy Molman, and the show starts now. About to take the tarp off and your shirt. Yeah. Should I take the shirt off and for the show and the whole time just wave and talk?
Maybe not, Randy. Maybe you should leave your shirt on.
Just
wave
true.
your arm up in the air.
That sound that you would hear is a bunch of listeners all at the same time. My name's Randy Molman. Welcome to the Mole Hole. Mark Langston also with me as always.
Somebody's got to do it.
What do you think? That's true. You're the only one.
Okay.
What do you think of this new tarps off, shirts off fan experience at Busch Stadium? I was there on Tuesday.
Oh, how was the excitement of it?
The walk-off home run by
Wow.
Ivan Herrera. Quite a game. I got to tell you, the ballpark seems to be buzzing more than it has in, 3 seasons?
Oh, yeah.
And this was a Tuesday night. It wasn't sold out. But there was some electricity in there, man.
Yeah. I like them not sold out myself. I know that's a terrible thing to say.
But
I get a little more room.
Easier to get tickets.
Yeah.
Tickets are cheaper. I love that too.
Right.
But when they're not sold out, it usually means they're not good.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's the double-edged sword thing.
Well, we had the rally squirrel. That was
right.
good. We had Gloria.
Gloria
Maybe
Blues,
this is something that's going to catapult them.
Back in 82, Celebration.
Oh, there you go. Great song.
Yeah. The Heat is on in 85. Oh man. They always, some fun happens. There's a song or an event or a moment where, and by the way, this tarps off thing, first of all, I know I sound like an old when I say this, but since when did tarps off mean shirts off? Like,
I am so with you on that.
When did tarps become shirts?
We're
wearing
old.
tarps now?
Yeah, we're both old.
Yeah. Kids love it.
I asked the same thing.
You look around. I was with a bunch of college buddies at the game. And you look around the stadium and they watch that section. And then you get little pockets throughout the stadium of people that take their shirts off and start waving it around.
Wow.
It's become quite the phenomenon. Very cool.
You don't want to see me with my shirt off. I'll tell you right now.
I'm not taking my shirt off at the ballgame.
I'd love to. Wish I could.
The only place my shirt is off is at the pool.
Ooh.
Or at the beach. Or when nobody's home around the house and I'm just running around.
Getting in the shower.
Yeah. Getting in the shower.
Yeah.
Right. I don't shower with a tarp on or a shirt on.
And how about Ollie? Did you hear about that?
Yeah. He loves it. And
gave all those kids tickets?
Yeah.
Brought them down to the
dugout. Like, this is the kind of stuff that makes sports fun. And sometimes I do think baseball, especially in St. Louis, we get a little too serious.
Yeah.
A little too full of ourselves. We're the Cardinals. We've got class. We're one of the best. We're one of the best organizations in sports.
Right.
Take your shirt off.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Take your tarp off.
Take your tarp off. Right. I was going to say this. My mind goes in a different. I could use tarp for anything. Then take your tarp off. Hey, you don't know what I'm saying.
No,
one knows what I'm saying.
No.
How about we get those tarps off? But yeah, what a cool thing. And it's so much fun. And look, it's silly. It's a bunch of young adults.
I loved it. Yeah.
And you know what's funny? If you watch a baseball game in Japan, I mean, not in Japan, you don't actually have to be there, but if you watch a Japanese baseball game, a Korean baseball game, they have their games are like soccer games. They're like the MLS or the international games. Fans with flags, there's noisemakers. I don't know about the tarps off over there, but what I'm saying is, why do we not have more of an atmosphere like that for American baseball?
Great question. After going to a soccer game, a city soccer game, and seeing how crazy they are,
right,
for the whole game,
the constant noise, the supporter section going nuts, chants and cheers,
drums going.
That's what they do in Japan and Korea, and that the whole Asian baseball, those baseball leagues over there. That's what they do. They do that. Yeah. They've got the whole game. You're seeing and hearing noisemakers. And why can't we do that?
Why not?
And this tarps off thing kind of reminds you, like, where's this been? Why are we doing this more?
Right.
For baseball games. And by the way, this has created quite a little phenomenon. They started doing it in Tampa this week.
Copycats. That's all I can say.
Oh, yeah. They're going to copycat us all year. You're going to see it sweep through Major League Baseball. And where did it start? Of course, St. Louis.
That's right. Well, they give us credit.
Well, they better. I love taking me some credit. Like every week when I talk about how Jordan Walker, I told you, be patient.
Yes, you did.
The one thing so far I've gotten right, Mark, the one thing. And I'm going to hit on it. When everyone else was like, I wonder if he's going to give the kid a chance to mature and develop. Now, I thought Nolan Gorman was going to turn into a star also. He's okay, he's fine. But he hasn't turned into what Walker has done in this first 2 months of the season. And anyway, back to the original point before I started glad-handing myself. I love it. And it's funny. I know there's probably some grumpies out there. There's probably some grumpies out there who are like, these kids taking their shirts off and waving it's kind of juvenile. But that's the point. Baseball should be fun. It's a sport. It's a game. We grew up playing it as kids in the yard with sticks and tennis balls. And you know what I mean? Like, baseball should be fun. And this is reminding me that maybe this is what, we talked about it last week, Mark. What are some of the things they still need to fix their TV situation, which is ridiculous. They sped up the game, made the game faster, this type of stuff, fan engagement with the young fans. This is the type of stuff that boosts numbers and gets people excited about baseball. And it's not look, everyone's going to go, well, baseball's already a great game. No one's saying that. What I'm saying is, I'm sorry. I hate to say this to everyone out there. Baseball can be boring for young fans.
Yeah.
It just can. But when you can go to a game and have fun, see this, whatever this tarps off phenomenon turns out to be, if ballparks around the league start to incorporate a more loud, fun, boisterous atmosphere, young fans are all about that.
Oh, yeah.
Start going to baseball games.
Right. And take your tarp off.
And take your tarp off.
I know. I think it's great.
If you so choose.
It reminds me a little of sports, the things I've seen of Sportsman's Park, where it's close, and you could hear the fans yelling at the players and things. It seemed to be more together in Sportsman's Park because it was just closer, tighter.
Yeah.
And people, what I've seen, people were yelling and screaming and having a great time. And this maybe lends a little bit to the old days.
Yeah. And what's funny? I started thinking about this too. Every sporting event that is memorable to me that I've attended over the years, other than the wins, like when we used to go to the Greatest Show on Turf games and the Rams, it was awesome. because they were winning and it was loud. I'm not talking about wins necessarily, but like a college football atmosphere. When I went to Alabama, the songs, the cheering, the stadium together, and an old stadium where you are closer to the field. Kyle Field at Texas A&M is the same way. They don't have cheerleaders. They have yell leaders. They chant stuff throughout the game. All of the Aggie fans know the chants. The entire stadium is chanting and singing. That's fun.
I love that stuff.
Yeah. That's what makes, we've got a lot of people at Mizzou who complain about the song.
Oh, yeah, right.
The
Kansas song?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the KU song, right.
And why? Why do people complain about that? When the college kids get into that song and the crowd's going nuts, and then the blank KU starts to ring throughout Memorial Stadium or Mizzou Arena. That's fun. Can we let the young people have fun, Mark?
True. That's even gone into the baseball. They did that at the baseball game.
Yes,
too. I know.
The Tarps Off folks were singing that song.
I know. See,
and they were yelling blank KU.
I know,
which is awesome.
Why not?
I get so tired. Look, and it's people of my generation, our generation, that are the ones that complain about this stuff.
Sticks in the mud.
Yeah. The young people aren't complaining about it.
No, they're having fun.
Yes.
I enjoy it. I love it. When I go to the games and you're going, M-I-Z, I love that. Everybody together. I feel like I'm part of it.
Yeah. Anytime you go somewhere and the crowd has something that they're responsible for, or they get into with a song or a cheer or a whatever, those make the most memorable experiences for me. When I we went to Alabama to watch Mizzou play several years ago, Drew Lock was the quarterback. They brought back a song that was a tradition at their stadium for years and years called Dixieland Delight.
Yeah, Alabama song.
That game, by the way, let me say, they hadn't played that at a game in something like 10 years. And the reason was the students did the same thing that they do at Mizzou games when they chant, blank KU. The Alabama students were doing that at Auburn, at Tennessee, at LSU throughout the song. And so our generation complained Alabama stopped playing it at games because the fans wouldn't stop saying those negative things about the other schools. Well, several years ago when we went to that Mizzou game, Alabama decided, you know what? We're going to bring it back.
Gloves off.
And the Alabama crowd during Dixieland Delight, when that song came on and the whole crowd singing and chanting, one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And it's fan engagement makes games fun. How many games have you been to where you're sitting there and it's just quiet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The team's not very good. The fans aren't into it. It's a snooze.
It is.
You don't remember any of those games.
I don't. I honestly don't.
So,
and you come in beaming about the game you went to where the kids took their tarps off.
Yes.
It's a
first thing I talk about today. Awesome time on Tuesday night. Tuesday night, half-filled stadium. Everyone was doing, watching the game and then watching the tarps off section. What are they doing over there?
I'm thinking eventually everybody in the stadium's going to take them off. Like you said, it's starting to go to other areas, sections. So I'm thinking maybe at some point somebody's going to go, maybe you ought to do it in a Mizzou game. Tarps off, everybody.
Tarps off in the Mizzou student section.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, some of those games are so hot, half the students have their shirts off anyway.
Right. Just swing it.
Yeah. My thing too is the Cardinals have embraced it. The team, the players, because like you said, Ollie brought that whole crew down, the original crew that started it, had them meet the players, and the players loved it. The players loved it. The fans loved it. tarps off, people loved it. But now the Cardinals as an organization, they have designated an area now in that right above the bleachers in right field. That area is now considered general admission. So if you buy, I don't think you can buy a specific ticket for that section. What you do is there are people that have those standing room packages, or there are people that buy general admission tickets, and you can go to that section and be a part of it if you want to. They're leaving it kind of open until it gets filled up, so that people who buy people aren't buying seats, like someone, again, no offense to anyone in my generation, but somebody 55 who goes to the game with his wife, they're not sitting right in the middle of the tarps off section when everyone else around them is young and shirts off, and, So the Cardinals have bought in, the team has bought in, they love it. Again, anything that makes going to a game more interesting and more fun, and it's awesome.
And I think Ollie bought those kids tickets for the next game.
He did.
Yeah. And at the news conference, I noticed him. He was jazzed up about it.
Yeah.
He was like, the guy, I don't know who did this, but the guys loved it. This is great.
The team loved it.
Yeah.
And they hit home runs, and as they're rounding the bases, they're pointing up to the tarps off section.
Yeah, I think it motivated the players a little bit. It got not only the fans, but the players, got them going.
This also ties in, Mark, to what we've talked about the Cardinals. They're young. They're fun. Yeah. So for them, this is like a perfect match, because this team is young and fun and exciting, and they're playing a fun brand of baseball. I mean, last night was rough. That was a rough game, but
you got that once in a while.
Yeah, they're a young team who's learning as they go, and there's nothing in their mind where they're like, they're not beaten down by years of losing or being in the league a long time. They're not at the end of their career. They're at the beginning. They're joyful. They're boisterous. They're having a good time. And by the way, they're 8 games over 500 and a game and a half out of first place.
Yeah.
They got to 9 games over before, when they won on Tuesday. I turned to my buddies at the game and I was like, would any of us have ever predicted all season long this team would be 9 games over 500?
No.
Nobody. Nobody.
No.
So they're having a ball, and they're winning games. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that for a second. And I also wanted to say, I want to shout out. Look, I don't think, and because I am a public address announcer, because I do Mizzou football and I'm the PA announcer for men's basketball at Mizzou, and I do PA for a lot of different things. I know everyone knows who John Hewlett is. Everyone knows the U-Man. He's been the PA announcer at the Cardinals for how many years? It's been since the 80s, 40 years. Do you know how comforting it is to walk into Busch and you get down, you're walking in and you get down to your seats and you hear John Hewlett's voice? You know what I mean? There's like a I'm home feeling. There's like, you know what I mean? Like when you walk into a stadium that you've been going to your whole life, and for most of your life, that voice is part of the soundtrack of the Cardinals. I've met John personally once. Couldn't have been nicer.
I think we got a picture of you meeting him.
We did, because Michael Langston, who's been on the show before, works for the Cardinals, your son, took me into the, gave me a little tour when we were in there with you guys a couple seasons ago. And I met John and we chatted for a minute. First thing he said to me when I introduced myself, he's like, "Oh, yeah, you're the Mizzou guy." Which I was, a little starstruck, because I was like, it's like one of my favorite voices growing up. I mean, the John Hewlett, Cardinals PA announcer. He's the man. I couldn't have been nicer. We've actually exchanged messages on social media for several years, but first of all, class guy. Every time I mention his name to somebody and they know him, they're like, the nicest guy ever.
He's got a great family. Ruth, his wife, wonderful, beautiful lady.
Yeah,
and the kids are great.
And for me as a Cardinal fan to walk into Busch and you walk in and you hear his voice, you're like, it's almost like you're like, you know?
And now I hear John is retiring finally from
KC.
From KC.
Yeah.
Next month, I think.
Yeah.
But he's not retiring from the Cardinals yet.
No.
No.
Look,
this
is the good thing about having this job as a PA announcer, you know. You can go and sit down and talk into a microphone. This is going to sound morbid, but until you die.
Okay.
It's not a physically demanding job.
No, we'll roll you in. Randy, we're going to roll you in, brother.
Someone asked me last year, because I this coming season will be my 17th season at Mizzou. I mean, that it doesn't even begin to get close to the longevity of John Hewlett or Tom Calhoun for the Blues. But someone asked me, they're like, you know, how long do you, and I go, as long as I don't mess up, I hope they have to pry that microphone out of my dead hand. I hope I'm there. Well, you remember the legendary Yankees guy, and I wish I could remember his name. The Yankees had a legendary PA announcer who did it until he was 98 years old.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, when he passed, Derek Jeter of the Yankees, they had found a recording of him doing Derek Jeter's, walk up, now batting, Derek Jeter. Like the guy had this unique, it's like Derek Jeter. Like he had this, cool. And so Derek Jeter, for the rest of his career, the regular PA announcer, the new guy, didn't announce him. They played the recording of the older PA announcer, the guy who'd been there for 50 years. So anyway, I just wanted to say too, like part of the whole atmosphere for me, and I know I'm one of those kids because I do this kind of work now, but even as a kid, I would walk into the stadium and listen. And you being in radio, you probably did the same thing. Like I would listen to these PA, like for the Big Red, it was Jim Holder for years.
Wow, forgot about him.
And his voice was so good. I loved him going to Cardinals games. And then, John Hewlett. So, and I want to talk before we go to break too. Andy Carroll, by the way, from the Springfield Daily Citizen and Scoops is going to join us at 8:30. We're going to talk Cardinal baseball and some of these minor leaguers that are working their way up through the system. They're going to be here in the next year or so. So I want to get Andy hasn't been on since opening day. So I want to get his take on the Cardinals. I mentioned Tom Calhoun. I've gotten to know Tom a little bit over the years.
Great guy.
Yeah. We couldn't have two more iconic
and nice guys.
Nice.
I worked with Tommy at WIBV in Belleville.
Yeah. Tommy's from the East Side.
Yes, he is.
I never have called him Tommy. That's the first time I've ever called him Tommy. You call him Tommy. You've worked with him.
Yeah.
I can't call him that. To me, again, another guy. I have a really good story about him real quick. 2007, when I decided, you know what? If you remember hearing my story a few weeks ago, I talked about I came out of college and I wanted to do this kind of work, sports broadcasting, announcing. Life kind of took over out of college. Opportunities didn't pay. I was like, I can't afford it. So I didn't get back into doing sports stuff until 2007. I was 37 years old at the time. So 2007, I went and auditioned at the River City Rascals, and I got the job as their PA announcer. So I decided during preseason, they did, for that league, they had like 3 or 4 preseason games before the league started. So I said, well, the Gateway Grizzlies are in the same league as the Rascals. So I want to go to a Grizzlies game and kind of hear the PA announcer, kind of see how everything lays out before we start doing stuff at the Rascals. So I get a ticket to the Grizzlies. I have a little notepad and a pen because I want to take notes. I go and I sit down in the stands and I sit down, music's playing, whatever. I sit down pregame, and then all of a sudden, because Tom Calhoun did the Gateway Grizzlies PA for years. He just, quote unquote, retired from the Grizzlies after last year. I sit in the crowd, Mark, I swear to you. I sat there, I had my notebook out, and then Tom Calhoun's voice came on. And I literally sat there and I went, I was almost heartbroken because I was like, I don't sound like this. I don't have his voice. I was crestfallen. I was like, what am I doing? I'm going to be working in the same league as this guy? I didn't realize it until he got going into his announcements. Then I was like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. I started asking some of the Grizzlies fans around me, and they were like, that's Tom Calhoun. He does the Blues. I'm like, that's where I know that voice. And then I was even more crestfallen because I was like, they have the Blues guy who I've been listening to for 25 years. I told Tom this story, and he was like, you're too kind. You do a great job at Mizzou. He was very nice, but still, he is so good. That voice. So again, here in this town, the luxury we have walking into a Blues game, you hear the hockey mute, the organ and whatever, and then Tom Calhoun comes on, and you're like, we're home. You feel like you're at home.
Tommy has the smoothest. Oh, he used to do the commercials at WIBV.
Yeah,
and it was he had the smoothest, best delivery. Still does. I mean, of anybody. It was amazing how good Tommy was doing commercials. I mean, but that's his job. But he is really a very talented. He's got a God-given talent. A natural. We call him a natural. And he is. And you're right. He's the nicest guy.
And by the way, how long's he been with the Blues? Almost around 40 years, something like that. Do you know he has never in 40 years or however long it's been now, never missed a game. You're talking about 40 plus home games, including preseason. So mid 40. That is ridiculous. I've been at Mizzou 16 years. I missed one game because I had COVID.
Fun
in
fact,
2021.
Fun fact, he likes Chihuahuas. He's got little bitty dogs. He loves them.
Yeah.
And good for him. I mean, I'm just kidding.
I feel like I almost feel like if you talk to John Hewlett or Tom Calhoun and you talk to them for long enough, you would leave that conversation and go, do these guys, like in real life, do they ever get mad at anything? It doesn't appear so. They seem, both of them, so they seem so even and joyful, and they're grateful and thankful for their careers. Like that, man. It hits me. I'm telling you, every time I walk into Busch Stadium and I hear John Hewlett's voice, I feel like there's a calm that comes over me. Like, this is I'm home. Same at the Blues games with Tom Calhoun. And that funny story with me, like sitting at Gateway Grizzlies ballpark like this, like, I can't compete with this guy. This is Tom Calhoun. I'm supposed to go over here in the same league and be a PA announcer like this guy.
You're doing fine.
Yeah,
you're doing fine.
I get it. I still don't have that kind. I still don't have that kind of pull and that kind of sway. I mean, or in that kind of voice. Those two guys, seriously, them. And then as a kid, Jim Holder was, and I met Jim when I got the Mizzou job. I got his contact info. I reached out to Jim Holder. He graciously responded and said, let's have lunch. We went to lunch on the landing. And Jim Holder like gave me PA announcing advice. In St. Louis, we've had a host of PA announcers. John Hewlett and Tom Calhoun, and for me, Jim Holder are the absolute best. Like, and so you notice that too. You go to a Cardinals game, even though you got the tarps off, you got the fans going nuts, you got a young team, they're fun to watch. There's a calm that comes over me when I hear John Hewlett's voice. Just the best. Him and at the Blues games as well with Tom Calhoun. Okay, we're going to take this break. Andy Carroll's going to join me on the other side. We're going to talk Cardinal baseball right after this.
Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6922 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchatas and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open Tuesday through Sunday. El Potro, 6922 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland. Find them online at elpotrostl.com.
Jewels on Hampton in St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches on site. Jewels on Hampton is a premier jeweler featuring Alvanza's jewel art designs with an exquisite selection of diamonds, semi-precious stone jewelry, and vintage watches. Their expert design team can restyle your jewelry to today's contemporary style. They also do jewelry and watch repair. Need extra cash? Jewels on Hampton is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches. Bring in your collectibles and clocks, sports memorabilia, and figurines too. Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton, just 3 blocks south of Chippewa. Call them at 314-752-5000. 314-752-5000. Jewels on Hampton.
Welcome back to the Mole Hole. My name's Randy Molman. Thank you for joining us here today. And St. Louis Cardinals baseball. Tarps off. Tarps off. Let's take our tarps off, Mark. No,
You don't want to see me with that tarp.
No, we don't want to tarps off. If we weren't on video, I might do it. If we weren't on video, I'd sit here and tell everyone.
No.
You know that? No, you don't.
No. Don't do it.
You don't want.
No.
Then you'd have to put like sunglasses on or something. You have to look the other way.
Those man boobs.
Oh.
What do they call them? I can't do it.
Don't get me started on that.
The whole belly thing.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. All right. Joining us now, of course, is our good friend Andy Carroll from the Springfield Daily Citizen and Scoops, the Scoops Network. Andy Carroll, at the end of the last segment, I was talking about, told that story, which you know because you worked with at the Rascals with me back in the day. You know that story where I went and sat and listened to the Grizzlies PA announcer and walked away very sullen and crestfallen because there's no way I could be as good as Tom Calhoun. And that was a running joke for us at the Rascals. I'm no Tom Calhoun.
I think my favorite times are whenever he would join the Grizzlies broadcast in our booth, and it was just kind of like it was brought right in front of your face. Yeah. There he was.
I mean, I actually told Tom that story. I told several years after the fact. I told him that story. He couldn't have been nicer. He's like, "Oh, it's so nice, but you do a great job with the Mizzou style." But still, I mean, you probably feel the same way I do, being a big sports fan. There is something about walking into a Cardinals game, a Blues game. For me, back in the day, this was before your time, but when the big red football, the St. Louis football Cardinals were here, Jim Holder was the PA announcer. Whenever you walk into that stadium and you get that recognizable long-time voice, there's just something when you walk in and you go, yeah, this is right.
Oh yeah, there's no question. And here you're mentioning the tarps off. I mean, the game day experience changes over the generations, but you definitely need things that feel familiar. And those guys, yeah, I mean, Tom Calhoun goes back to as long as I've been a Blues fan, as long as I've been alive. So it is special and unique that. But it is kind of locking some people out of jobs, Randy. So we need to eventually get.
Don't I know it, Andy? All right, first let's talk about the Cardinals. I was at the game Tuesday. I was with a bunch of buddies of mine, and Herrera walked it off, and the game was so fun, back and forth. Couple of gaffes kind of got the Pirates back in the game that night. But that's kind of a young team thing, right? They're going to make some mistakes, but still, so much fun. The atmosphere in the stadium is different than it's been for the last 2 or 3 years. Not only because of this young team, but now you've got a group of people in this tarps off section that are, wreaking havoc. You've got it's when you put success, couple it with youth, it's amazing how the feeling can change in the ballpark.
Yeah, boy, it has been a lot of fun, and kind of the first fun we've had since the Albert Pujols swan song year for us back in 2022.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
It really has felt like you're turning on the game, and not because it's summer and the Cardinals are on. You're turning it on because it's fun to watch again. And you mentioned the style of play. I mean, certainly that's something that's been fun to watch. Come together at the lower levels of the minors, and I know we'll spend some time talking about what's going on there this year, but.
Sure.
That core group of players, has talked a lot about they've the living conditions in the minor leagues have changed over the last few years. They all lived in an apartment. Many of them lived in apartments together, and I think that this was something that in Springfield and in Memphis started to kind of build as a group that was going to have fun playing the right way and hard. And you mentioned the back and forth game. I mean, Alec Burleson diving to get that that play at first base when we didn't cover the bag, and just there's definitely a sense that this team expects to win, lays it all out, and isn't satisfied with just moral victories.
There's something to be said about just a group of young guys who don't really know any better. You know what I mean? They're talented. We know that, but they don't. They don't know any better. All the predictions of them being one of the worst teams in baseball. They'll finish last in the NL Central. Over under for wins in Vegas when it first came out was 69 wins. I mean, that went up a little bit before opening day, but they don't care about any of that stuff. They're going out there having a ball, having fun, and it really reflects in the style of play. Let me ask you though, I obviously none of us, I could tell you right now, there is no chance I would have ever said at any point during this season, the Cardinals would have been 9 games over 500 at one point. And here they were after Tuesday night, 9 games over 500. I wonder, because look, Chaim Bloom has laid out a plan. He's been very public with the fans and the fan base about their plans that, this is the beginning of what is now turning into more of a retool than a rebuild fully, but it's still a rebuild regardless of their record. But with a strike looming, is it too early to start wondering, what do they do at the trade deadline? If their plan was to do a little selling, do they just from a you and I just chatting perspective, I'm so interested to see how they approach a deadline year with a strike looming, with a team that's on a certain path. Do they alter that path somewhat if they're winning?
It's been interesting to listen to his comments that, he did an interview with what used to be Live at Shannon's. Now I don't know what they call it, live after the Friday night games. And we get to actually talk to him here in about 10 days. It's the Bloggers Day at Busch Stadium next Saturday. So I'm looking forward to, getting to spend an hour with him and listening to him answer questions that I'm sure will be a lot like you just asked. And, I don't think it necessarily speeds you up at the deadline this year. I do think it still makes sense. I don't know if you classify it as selling. I think you look for a baseball trade that makes in the short term and the long term. But, the opportunity, it certainly is true. You mentioned it being more of a retool than a rebuild. I think, the path has been accelerated by what we've seen over the past 2 months. 2 months is a blink of an eye in baseball terms, but I think what you're seeing is the emergence of some young talent that you believed, that was drafted highly and developed, and it didn't develop always on a linear path, but here they are, kind of showing that they're for real at the big leagues. I don't think that is a mirage. And so, when you mention kind of the strike looming, I think that the opportunity that the Cardinals have is to identify, and it'll be really interesting whether it's at the trade deadline this year, whether it's in the off season, 2028, how they prioritize, locking down some of those core pieces, contractually. So, you've got Ivan Herrera, you've got Jordan Walker, you've got JJ Weatherholt, you've got Mason Wynn. How do they, and of course it takes, it's a two-way street to those players, how do they see their future? But, how do the Cardinals, go about kind of establishing, some certainty in their roster from a, because, you mentioned it, Randy. I mean, if there wasn't a strike year, if the revenue pieces from TV and all that hadn't been jumbled in the last few years, you could make the case to do a kind of a San Diego Padres style. Hey, we've got these young guys. They're making below market value. Let's go get all those pieces we can now, wildly overpay for them if we have to. But like putting our chips into the table and seeing what we can do this year. That's not the direction, obviously, that the Cardinals are going to go. So I think, as you go into the uncertainty, the kind of the uncertain economic future, it makes sense to sort of start to try and see, as the trend has been in baseball. Yeah, it sounds crazy to like talk extensions with Weatherholt 2 months in, but that's really where baseball is going in a lot of ways, is buying out those arbitration years in exchange for a little bit longer, length of contract and certainty in your roster.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the luxury is, you look at the roster and you already have a young. As we've said over and over, the roster's young, but there's also a core of players that you if you're paying attention, you can identify and say, all right, this is the core that you want to build into the future with. And yes, that's a aspect of this that I admittedly haven't thought enough about. You're exactly right. Like, how do they approach locking up a group of young core players who I would think you're looking at Weatherholt for sure. You're looking at a Mason Wynn. You're looking at a Jordan Walker. To me, Ivan Herrera, and probably Michael McGreevy is one that sticks out in the rotation. How do they go about, establishing the young base in 2026 to make sure this group is together in 2029, 2030, 2031?
Yeah, I think the timeline that they're on, I think that there's, to use an old Mozeliak era, word, there's some clarity, I think, a little bit in what that core is. And it's not that things can't change or you don't, get it wrong, but I think it's fairly evident that the Cardinals are seeing that core emerge on the field this year. And it does, as you think about whether they play, I mean, you kind of mentioned, it's been a hot topic of mine on this show, talking about the impact that potential strike and labor, dispute can have on a rebuilding team and its timeline.
Yep.
For Major League Baseball and the tarps off thing, what a cool thing to start in St. Louis. I'm glad to see them take that section and kind of dedicate it to people who are going to go have a little more, a little more out there fun than I will, sitting with my scorecard and my shirt on. But it's one of those, you're seeing it spread across baseball, right? So like it's happening in other markets, and it would really be quite a shame. And not that labor issues are driven by seeing things like that, but it's a moment in time for baseball where they really would be fumbling it. I think that they're emerging in a lot of ways, back to the preeminence, maybe right behind the NFL again, in terms of popularity in the United States. So it would be, both from the Cardinals' perspective, I think kind of seeing this young core come together a lost year would be pretty tough to swallow. But I think for baseball as a whole. So, as you start to plan around that roster, I think, it makes sense as a first move to say, okay, our window opening has accelerated a little bit. Let's let's plant our flag on this core group of guys. And there are more, you never can bank on, guys that are going to come up and, they're doing well in A-ball or in AA and say, okay, like we're going to, they're going to be here in 3 years and it's going to be great. But you do look at a guy like, Raniel Rodriguez, who's in AA at age 19, and he's someone that John Mozeliak said when we asked him when he was about, at the end of his tenure, we asked him who the best prospects he'd ever seen was. And at this time, he was 17 years old, and he said, Raniel Rodriguez is the best prospect I've ever seen. So, I mean, there are the Cardinals still have some high-end pitching talent that they've drafted recently. They've got some high picks, again this year. I mean, the talent pipeline at the minor league level, I think has a lot of tools, things that could be secondary pieces when you think about trades that might be more baseball oriented, where, maybe you're not selling so much, but you're coupling a guy like a Joshua Baez or somebody like that who's got some tools. A Blaze Jordan, who they acquired, as part of a deadline deal, has looked quite good. And so it's not that you just ship those guys off, but they have a lot of options in terms of, pieces at the minor league level that they can, kind of prioritize as guys they see as future parts of the big league 40-man roster, and then other guys that might be attractive to other teams and help them add those complementary pieces. I just don't think you'll see them be a definitive buyer or seller.
Yeah.
But I do hope that they're active.
Yes, agreed. And I think there's a way. Look, you remember the Milwaukee Brewers were in the middle of a pennant race They were in first place and traded Josh Hader. If I remember that correctly. They were so I am, you cannot, there has to be a way, and it'll be so tough for the front office, but there will be a way, to your point, to make baseball moves that make sense for the organization, because look, you've got some players on this team that would have some interest to other organizations, where you could make baseball moves where it would appear you're offloading a player or two that at first glance you'd say, well, why would they trade him? And at the same time, get something back in return that helps your club and for sure helps you down the road and in the future. But how do you do that if you're in a race? How do you do that, without sacrificing? You know what I mean? It's such a fine line. Everyone, all the armchair GMs that the Cardinal Nation has out there, they think it's so easy and simple. Well, just go buy players or make trades that make sense. It's nowhere close to being that easy, especially for a team that isn't supposed to be 8 games over 500 and has a roster full of young players.
Yeah, that's why I don't think you'll see, you can name the pieces that would, that the Cardinals would probably, wouldn't mind expending in return for future capital, right? You're thinking of like a Riley O'Brien, who, he's been great, although he's faltered a little bit lately, but that's the type of player that if you can get something in return, is he part of your 2028, 2027, 2029? I mean, especially 28 and 29, he probably isn't. Or a Dustin May, but I do think that, to your point, you won't see the Cardinals, I think, go into a full sell mode. No. I think that it'll take the right kind of deal for those guys, because there is something to be said for the fact that, look, I don't, hey, I hope they keep proving me, keep proving all of us wrong and all that. But, you get into the playoffs against a team like the Dodgers, a team like the Braves right now. I mean, it seems tough to see them contending, in those series in a serious way right now. But having said that, there's a lot that a young team making the playoffs is kind of, you don't go there and win the first time. You kind of need to go through those, trial by fire in October moments to come out the other side of it and continue to grow. So there's value in making the playoffs this year. I don't think that the Cardinals, the front office would be silly to, try to undermine the group in a lot of ways. I think that would be, this clubhouse that's having a lot of fun and playing well together. I think they would, like to see the the organization reward that a little bit. But yeah, I don't think that you're going to see it in a defined way. But I do think that Chaim Bloom kind of mentioned it on an interview. It's like we have to be open and look. We can never miss an opportunity. We have to have our ears open. We have to make calls. We have to be aware of all the opportunities that are out there, because I don't think it's as straightforward as they're not picking a direction here. I think they're looking for an opportunity to make the team better now and also better in the future.
Andy Carroll, Springfield Daily Citizen and Scoops Network, joining us here talking Cardinals this morning on the Mole Hole. Is it weird that I'm not at all surprised at how good JJ Weatherholt looks?
No, I mean he's such a high baseball IQ, great understanding of the strike zone and plate discipline that just. There are some guys in the minor leagues that you see have success, and I'll think of a guy, Moises Gomez was a guy early in my time covering the Springfield Cardinals who hit 50 home runs. Right. I mean, an ungodly amount of home runs, but you looked at kind of his the way that he took at bats. He struck out a lot. A lot of those home runs in the minors can be off of pitching that's not the best in parks with wind blowing out. I mean, it's just not always something that you can look at and say that's going to translate really well. But you look at the way that JJ Weatherholt, approaches at bats, how much of a professional hitter he is, and you're like, yeah, this is going to play, at every level. It's not surprising, but you will, I think, continue to see him go through these adjustment periods where he goes through. I think what's really impressive about him is that even during the times in which you could look up and go, hey, he's kind of like 6 for his last 40. He's coming up with hits. In big at bats, he's spoiling pitches. He's going deep in counts. I mean, you're not looking at that and going, he's just figuring it out and making adjustments. I mean, you're not looking at a guy going, oh gosh, maybe he's a little in over his head. And then of course he'll come out of that slump just, with multi-hit game after multi-hit game. So that's what's really impressive is even during periods where he's going through, a drier spell. I mean, you're watching a guy who's always taking a professional at bat.
On the flip side of that, one guy you and I talked about him, last year, the year before, and I have been pulling for this guy, if only because as a Cardinal fan growing up in the 80s, I loved watching speed and defense. Victor Scott's been a little bit better of late, but man, I'm just pulling for that guy. What if he figures it out here? What an absolute weapon to have, especially now that Weatherholt sort of establishes your leadoff hitter. To have him hitting ninth, if he can figure it out offensively and get on base pretty consistently, just that weapon of speed. I've just been rooting for him so hard, but man, it's been tough for him.
Yeah, even the other night, I think it was Tuesday when they went to extras and he was the runner at second.
Yeah.
And they kind of said on the broadcast, they're like, hey, this probably changes your calculus if you're Ollie Marmol the inning before. Like, do you pinch hit for Victor Scott or are you okay with him being your runner at second to start extra innings if he makes an out here? It's like, yeah, like having him start that inning at second base is a huge plus. And so Victor Scott's a guy that getting to see him play a little bit in Springfield and talk to him a few times. I mean, he's definitely someone who's a little bit of a glue guy in the clubhouse in terms of his personality. He works really, really hard, and everybody that I ever talked to down here said that he was one of the hardest working guys. JJ Weatherholt talked about it. He's like, this is a guy that when I got to West Virginia, he was a year or two ahead of me, and he was just the leader of everything that we did in terms of how hard he worked. So if there's a guy who can figure it out and avoid becoming Billy Hamilton, hopefully it's Victor Scott. But yeah, he does look, outmatched a little bit at the plate. And this is, defensively, he's going to be a weapon too, as well as on the base paths. But you're going to have to get more production out of that, especially when you've had kind of an emergence of a Nathan Church this year as someone who can give you production at the plate and does have a lot of those similar characteristics defensively and his speed profile on the bases. Right.
And with Lars Nootbaar's return kind of imminent, I just wonder what that's going to do it would not surprise me if they sent Scott down when Nootbaar comes back. But again, it's just, I wanted to ask you about him just because he's just a guy that I've been rooting for, and it's just, I feel for him. And to add a guy who can get on base regularly to this group and then wreak the havoc he could wreak on the bases, it my goodness, like how valuable would that be? But he just hasn't been able to figure it out. And it's just frustrating because he's just a guy that I've been following, for several years. And I know you got to follow him too down in Springfield. Speaking of that, let's shift gears real quick. We only have about 5 minutes left. I know that the St. Louis fan base has been clamoring for Jimmy Crooks to get called up. I love the patience that the Cardinals organization is showing. He is putting up numbers, but there's some parts to his game that they want him to solidify before he gets here. What are you seeing in the minor leagues? Some of these guys that Cardinal fans are going to want to see. Who do you think we'll see in the near term as opposed to the long term?
Well, I'll answer your question, but real quick before, just to circle back to your last point you made about rooting for Victor Scott, who's the guy that just got called up, Brian Torres.
Yep.
Who I've been rooting for a long time. So this is a player that's taken almost 2,000 at bats in his professional career, going back to the time he was a teenager. Yeah. He made it to independent ball, won a couple batting titles with the Milwaukee Milkmen. So that's how far down away from the big leagues he was a few years ago. And this, again, you talk about a guy, an on-base guy, a pesky at-bat guy. He's hitting 336 in Memphis. I mean, he's not a power guy, but he's much like the type of hitter that you and I sometimes pine for back in the old days of somebody who just would find ways to get on base and hit singles and be content with it. That's Brian Torres. But really just the moment he takes the field for the first time, I think is just a moment I'm happy to see that he gets to have.
And you and I sort of have that soft spot for those independent ball guys anyway. Like, these guys have come from, they get overlooked and they have to work, 5 times as hard to get to where, and very few of them make it. And to see Brian Torres, I mean, his on base percentage is .454 at Memphis. He walks more than he strikes out. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm so excited when I saw that.
Yeah. But so to answer your question though about guys that the Cardinal fans can have an eye on, I think that's an interesting question, because especially this year, you really want. I mean, I don't see guys coming to take bats away from Nathan Church or Victor Scott if they can get it. And I'm like, this is still a season where we're trying to figure out. I don't think they're going to have the Memphis to St. Louis shuttle going for guys like Nathan Church. They want to see him establish himself as a big leaguer. So. But when you do look at what's going on, you mentioned Jimmy Crooks. I mean, yes, there are some things that they're working on with him, particularly his strikeout rate, I think is the biggest one that they're trying to get to kind of come down a little bit before he goes up. But yeah, we just dovetails a little bit with what we talked about with the trade deadline. I mean, you've got in your organization, you have Ivan Herrera, you have Pedro Pajes, you have Jimmy Crooks, you have Leo Bernal, and you have Renel Rodriguez, who can all catch. and all of those guys are not all that far away. I mean, obviously some of them are in the big leagues now, but even the ones that aren't are ones that I think other organizations would be, prized to have. And catching is not a deep position, within professional baseball. They're hard to find, good ones. So the Cardinals have a little bit of spoils that they can, decide how they want to, develop each one of those guys, see how they're developing, see how they fit. Obviously Herrera probably fits, as a catcher every once in a while, but a DH most of the time. Is that something that Raniel Rodriguez has been playing some at first base? He just got called up to AA. We get to for the first time next week, but when the club comes back into town. But yeah, it's like how they do have some depth at a position that other organizations don't. And so how do the Cardinals view potentially using some of that depth in creative ways, if the opportunity strikes at the deadline to maybe make a trade that nobody saw coming, and I think that's where you probably have your eyes on guys like Joshua Baez or Blaze Jordan. I don't think they're going to be in St. Louis in September, but are they part of a package that, comes together in July or August or in the off season that lands a player that we didn't necessarily think the Cardinals were, close to getting?
Yeah. I looking over the 40-man, this is one of the few years usually you've got a little flexibility. They don't have a lot of flexibility in that 40-man roster anyway. So a lot of these guys people are talking about or pining for, I mean, Crooks or Baez, that they're on the 40-man, but some of these other guys and Torres who got called up, you'll have to make a corresponding move. You're going to have to DFA somebody. You're going to have to get rid. And so at this point, are they ready to do that? And the answer is no. I mean, I agree with that. Look, down the road, I have an eye on some players that look like, they might not last the season, but currently today, 2 months in, this 40-man's pretty set.
Well, what we still need, just as the last point, we still need the pitching, and that's the Liam Doyles, the Tanner Franklins, the Quinn Matthews. I'm sorry, Quinn Hughes. I'm thinking hockey. Yeah. Quinn Matthews is, we've got, that's I think where it was interesting to hear the rumor. You don't know if it's true, but the Cardinals are really prioritizing bats in this year's draft. I don't think that's a bad idea at all, but it does continue to be, the biggest piece that the Cardinals need to put together to really open that window up is to add to the rotation, add to the bullpen. You'll know when it's win now time for the Cardinals when they start to do that.
Andy Carroll, Springfield Daily Citizen and Scoops Network. Thanks for joining us this morning. Always a pleasure. Good to talk to you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Randy.
That's Andy Carroll, and I always get smarter when I talk to Andy Carroll. You know what I mean?
Yep. I do. I enjoy listening to this.
Yeah, he knows his stuff.
He does know his stuff.
He and I became friends years ago, and he's really, really good at what he does. All right. Thank you for joining us here in the Mole Hole today. My name's Randy Molman. We do this every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Hope you enjoyed the show today. Tarps off, everyone.